Magandang araw, ako si Kui Code. Welcome back to my channel where I teach Python problems through coding on Hackerrank. Today we're going to go over the default dictionary challenge. So this is the one here. But first we'll just start with our IDE. So first we'll just start make a dictionary called fruits. We'll have an empty dictionary here. And normally with an empty dictionary, if you try to call or get a key that doesn't exist, it'll give you an error. So as an example, if we try to print our dictionary with the Apple key, this will give you an error because the Apple key doesn't exist. That's actually not the error I was looking for. This is the error I was looking for. Yeah, it says that it doesn't actually exist. The key is wrong. Of course, we can still do our try catch here or our try except just to make the program continue running. That's not going to really matter because it's still going to print out this instead of the error. But like I said, this is how a normal dictionary works. But instead, if we were going to make it a default dictionary, what that means is that if the key doesn't exist, instead of giving you an error, it's going to give a default value and then just return the default value. So for example, if I have some data here, we'll just have a list, and this list could be a representation of like an array or like a database or a JSON through a web request or a file or whatever. So we'll do get some colors and some values here. So yellow is 1. I'll do it like this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we'll have yellow. We'll have blue is 2. Yellow is 3. Blue is 4, and then red is also 1. So this is our data. Now we can just put it in a dictionary here. So we'll make a dictionary, but instead of making a regular one, we'll make a default one. So default dictionary, and then we'll just pass in the type, which is list. So that just means that not only will each value be a list, but if we reference a key that doesn't actually exist here, it'll still return a list. So for example, for key value in our data, we have the name of default dictionary. The key will be added as a key. And then because this is, our program knows that this is always going to return a value, which is a list, we can actually access the list methods here. So append is a list method. We can just pass in v, and then we can just print it out to see what we get. So we'll pass in that. We'll go ahead and run this. I think I made a typo. Oh, I forgot to add it in here. So from collections import default dict. Run that again. So now we have our list here. So the yellow key has a value, which is a list of 1 and 3. I'll move this over here. Because we have yellow 1 and we have yellow 3. So instead of having two separate keys, with one having a value of 1 and the other one having a value of 3, for one, that doesn't make any sense because you can't have both. You can't have two separate keys that are the exact same. But rather than one being overwritten, we have it as a list. That way it just puts both of the values into a list, and same thing for blue and same thing for red. But let's see what happens if we try to reference something that doesn't exist. So I can just print out our dictionary here, and then you'll type in green. So obviously green doesn't exist. Normally this would crash or throw an error as I shown in my previous code section that I got rid of. But now if we go ahead and do that, it's just going to return an empty list because that's literally the default that we have it set to. So that is a good example. Let's also do one for, let's say, set. So let's call friendships equals default dictionary. We'll have a set. Of course, a set is doesn't have it also removes all the unique values as well, kind of similar to a dictionary, but the set is a list where the list itself has the default, or the list itself removes all duplicates. Of course, the dictionary itself, the keys has no duplicates. So now in this case, the keys and the values will have no duplicates. But anyways, we'll go ahead and make our data. So let's say call it friend pairs, and we'll just make up some names here. We'll just need kind of do the same thing. We'll get some strings for our name pairs. There's one, we'll just make 6 of them. So let's say we have Alice, Bob, Alice, Charlie. So for example, Alice is friends with Bob. Alice is also friends with Charlie. Bob is friends with David. Alice is friends with Bob. The reason why I'm doing this is to show that these are technically duplicates, so you won't actually see it twice. And then we'll have Charlie and David, and then we'll have Charlie and Alice, which already exist technically, but these are just in reverse order. So that's it for our data, and now we need to populate it in our friendship set here. So for user 1, user 2 in friend pairs. So user 1 is a representation of the first one, and then user 2 is representation of the second one in each tuple here. So inside of here, we can do friendships. And we can do user 1 for the key, and then for the value, because it's a set, we don't have append anymore, a set has add instead, and we'll just pass in user 2. So now for the Alice key, we can have Bob as the value, and then we can actually do the same thing but in reverse, just so it kind of goes both ways. This will be user 1 and user 2 and user 1. So we'll go ahead and print this. So for user friends in friendships items, we can print, we'll just make like a formatted string here. This will be user, and then we can just pass in, we'll just do sorted friends. I think that should be good. Let me get rid of this. Actually, I don't need to do that. I can just do it like that. Friend. That is, I think, a typo. So now we have our data printed. So the key is Alice. Alice has 2 friends, Bob and Charlie. Bob has Alice and David. Charlie has Alice and David as well. And then David has Bob and Charlie. If, for example, we didn't have this, I'll just show you, do it again. We have Alice as Bob and Charlie, Bob as only David, and then Charlie as Alice and David. Because if you look at the data, well, let's just look at the one that's actually missing. We don't actually have David in here. So let's see, which one? David has Bob, and David has Charlie, as we can see here. But because David has Bob in reverse order and David has Charlie in reverse order, it doesn't actually include it. That's why we added the reverse of the same thing. So that's an easy example with using a set where it does remove duplicate values and all that. And then the last thing that I can show is rather than, maybe you don't want a type, maybe you just want a generic, a very specific response if the key that you're requesting doesn't exist. So we'll go ahead and turn that off. I don't know why that's not red. That's weird. It might not matter, I don't think. No, it doesn't matter. Whatever. So for this one, we'll call it grades default dict, and then we'll do a lambda. And we'll put in, let's say, NA. A lambda is kind of a way to have a given output with a potential input without actually making an entire method or an entire function. So we have our default dictionary with the lambda NA, and then we can just reference grades. Alice has grade A, and then grades Bob has grade B, which is fine. I guess that should be an S. And now if you print out grades, what we see here is Alice has a value of A and Bob has a value of B. That's fine. But now the thing that we did this, the reason why we did this is, let's say we're trying to reference one that doesn't actually exist. So because we don't actually have a type here like we do with set or whatever, what it's going to do is just print out NA. So if I do grades Charlie, and we'll just print that out. And now it just says NA because that's what we have it set to. So you can kind of just put in like a generic, error message or, whatever you want in this case as an alternate, rather than actually having it just as like an empty value or dealing with any errors or whatever. So that's it for these examples. We'll just go ahead and do the challenge now. So it looks like in this challenge, let me scroll down here. So we have two inputs. These are two array sizes. So group A is size 5 and group B is size 2. So first we have a bunch of letters for size 5, which is the first 5. So that goes in one list. And then the second one is our list of our input size of 2. And then it looks like for the output, we have to print out A, where all of the actual indexes are. So for example, we're searching this list for all the A's. So the first A is the first one, we have one. The second A is the second one. And then the third A is the fourth one. So basically we're just trying to get all the information of where the A's exist inside of that group A. And then for B, of course, B exists at 3 and B exists at 5. So that's kind of the goal with this. So as you can see down here, A appears 3 times in positions 1, 2, and 4. B appeared 2 times in positions 3 and 5. And of course, in this sample problem, if C also appeared in group B, you would print -1. So that's just like if you're trying to reference something that doesn't exist, it would just do -1 instead. So what we'll do, this one is pretty straightforward. So from collections, import default dictionary. This is just a list of numbers. I spelled this wrong. So N and M equals list map int input split. And this is going to return a list, but because the list only has 2 values, which is this 5 and this 2, it's going to automatically unpack. So it won't actually return a list. It's just going to give you the integer for the first one and another integer for the second one. So like if, for example, just print N here, and then we can print M here. If we were to, run that, collections. So the input is 5 and 2, and normally if you print out a list, it includes a square bracket. So this just proves that these are in fact ins and not actual lists. So that's it for that. Anyways, for this next part, we can just loop through n, which is 5, to get all of these first 5 values that will be stored in our first list or container, and then we need a second loop for these 2. So the first one we'll do for I in range n. Oh yeah, we need to make our dictionary as well. Default dict, which is list. For this first one, all we have to do is really just add it. So get our dictionary. we can just take the input this way, which will just grab each one of these 5 times, or for these first 5, and just put it into the dictionary already, or automatically. And then because it's a list, as I said, we can use append, and then I plus 1, because this is assuming that the first one is actually 1, where normally if you put an I, it would be 0. So that's why we need to add that 1. So that's just basically going to get all the items. So for example, if I were to go ahead and print this out, just so you can kind of see, it's going to be, it might look a bit weird because of the errors. So as you can see, now we have our list A, or our key A, and now we have a list of where the indexes are. So we have A at 1, 2, and 4, and we have B at 3 and 5. So these numbers here are the exact same as what we have here. So in the next loop, all we need to do is, for example, call A, get the value, which is a list of 1, 2, and 4, and then call B, get the value of that one, which is, list of 3 and 5. So that's pretty easy. So for I in range M, we can just print dict input, and then this is going to return it with the brackets. So like usual, we can just unpack it, so it'll just return each on an individual line. So there we go. That's 1, 2, 4, 3, and 5. This is exactly what we wanted. There is more to do, but let me go ahead and submit this just so you kind of see. So what's wrong with these test cases here? Let me just check. Oh, yeah, a lot of these example problems have a bunch of nonsensical things where the first list is 10,000 and the second list is 100. But a lot of cases we need to handle the -1 because some of the ones don't exist. So what we need to do is, if this doesn't exist, like for example, if we had a C here, well, in the first list, C doesn't exist. So in the second list, if we're looking for the C, we'll just need to print out a -1 instead, where it says, if C also appeared in group word B, you would print -1. So we can just easily do or -1, which means, like I just said, if it doesn't exist in the dictionary, we can just do -1 instead. So it prints out either this or it prints out that. Go ahead and run that and see what we get. So that one was, of course, still successful, but the main thing is to see if all of these other ones were also successful. And that is it. We are good to go for this one. So that is it for this video. Please, if you found this helpful, please like and subscribe for future coding challenges. Let me know in the comments if you have any questions or suggestions for future videos. See you next time on Q Code. Paalam.